asking, but you look like you probably would just.
I look like the kind of guy that would eat just fistfuls of ice cream.
The Catwalk Podcast showcases the greatest of the people of the Permian Basin through partnering in conversation with high-level leaders, social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leadership, and industry executives.
Hey everyone, welcome to another week of the Catwalk. I'm your host, Jay Whitlow. Thank you for joining with us. I want to introduce to you our special guest today, John Mark Echols. John Mark was born and raised right here in Midland. He attended the University of Alabama and graduated with a degree in business management. After graduation, John Mark moved back to Midland and was invited to attend church. After giving his life to Christ, John Mark began to volunteer serving the homeless here in our community. Since that moment, it has become his and his family's life's calling. John Mark and his wife, Briana, founded the Field's Edge in 2016. The mission of Field's Edge is to promote human dignity by cultivating a home for the homeless and to empower a lifestyle of service. The Echols and their 4 children live on site at the village. Up next, please enjoy my conversation with John Mark Echols.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Catwalk. I'm your host, Jay Whitlow. Thank you so much again for joining with us. As always, sitting across the room from me is great Chris DeGaulle. Chris, what's up?
Not a lot. How are you?
I'm doing well. You?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. We want to welcome our special guest. This is John Mark Echols. Welcome to the Catwalk. We are so glad that you are here. I got to ask you before we start, John Mark, why go by both names and not John or Mark? Is there a story there?
There is a little bit. So my dad is John. So there's another John Echols in town that a lot of people know. And then my granddad was Mark, and so I got both names. And so John Mark. Got a middle name, too, is Wilson. So John Mark Wilson Echols.
So John Mark is your first name.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And then you have Wilson.
Yes, and
Okay.
Wilson's actually my brother's name, too, so it's kind of confusing, but...
So were you born first?
I was, yes.
So you're Wilson 1 then,
Yes.
right? Okay, that's good. Good to know that. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought John and then Mark was your middle name, so that's good to know. John Mark Wilson Echols. So that's great. Hey, I wanted to ask you guys, as I always do, to bring this up to the masses to discuss. Chris, do you have a superstition or something that you always do to kind of I always have to wear a certain clothes on a certain day. Do you have any superstitious things like that?
No.
You don't?
Nope.
No, John Mark, do you have anything? Do you have any kind of tradition, superstition
I
things?
mean, maybe wearing a Alabama game day jersey or something during the football game.
That's right. You went to Alabama. That's right. So, if the team is doing really good, you don't
May go take it off or something.
don't take And if they're really bad, then you remove it and wear a Tennessee jersey or something.
Oh, never. No.
So there's a guy. He plays for Minnesota Twins, the Major League Baseball team, and he just on a joke grabbed a unopened sausage link from the table where the players were getting ready and said, "Hey, touch this sausage link and let's see if we have good luck." And so they kept doing it every day. Minnesota went on an 11-game winning streak. Because people were reaching out and touching this summer sausage that was out on the counter there. Then they said, "Well, we've got to take it on the road." So because they wanted everybody to touch this sausage, which has got to be getting gross now, right?
Definitely.
So they wrapped it in plastic, stuck it in a shoe, and it's traveled with them. They've hit more home runs. They've won more games. They've done that. So I started thinking, what I do, and I'm like you, if I'm watching a sports event or something, I will sit a certain way or have something to eat, and I will not change what's happening if the team is doing well. In fact, there is a guy, he's the oldest guy in the world. His name is John Alfred Tenniswood. He's 111. He was born in Liverpool, and he attributes his long life of 111. Can you imagine? 111. Chris thought I was old. 111 is extremely old. He contributes his good health to eating fish and chips every Friday at 1:30. So neither one of you guys have anything that crazy? Chris, would you eat fish and chips on Friday at 1:30 if it meant you could live to be 111?
No.
Do you even like fish and chips?
I do, but 111,
That's too old.
yeah, there's a cutoff point where I've done pretty much everything that I'm going to do. Short of me sitting in a recliner for 30 more years because I can't move, I don't want that.
Okay, so what's the cutoff?
I'm going to say 70. I'm happy
What?
with 70. I'm happy with 70.
70 is the cutoff?
Yeah, for me.
Yeah, that's 13 years for me.
I know.
That's great. Do you have a cutoff year that you
I mean, I would like
wanna
to
hang it up?
I'd like to be in decent health when I'm at the end, but yeah, so 70 is kind of that. I'm already struggling with health issues, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be too old, I guess.
fish and chips guy?
I'm more of the guy that the veteran that his secret to long life was a cigar and whiskey every day.
Oh, there we go. So are you a cigar whiskey guy?
No, not really. I did like.
You're boring.
I'm pretty boring. I did like the older lady who was 100 years old, and she said that the key to longevity is bacon and Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, there's
I'll get
it was
behind that.
years ago. I think it was early 2000s.
Bacon and Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, she was 104, and they interviewed her, and she basically drank several Dr. Peppers a day.
That's crazy. I used to do that in college, drink Diet Cokes all the time, and then I had to give that up.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, I 13 years for me. That's scary, Chris. You gotta move that to 85.
Nope, I'm good with 70.
Oh, man, I can't do that. Well, John Mark, thank you so much for being here. A lot of our listeners, viewers may not really know your story, so I want to spend a few minutes just unpacking your story. So your bio said you were born in Midland, so walk me through what elementary school was like growing up. You said you had a brother. Tell me about your family.
Sure. So born and raised in Midland. Grew up in the same house that my parents still live in, and went to school at Trinity. So I've got an older sister and a younger brother, and lived here my entire life. Went to Trinity the entire time, and when I graduated, I was ready for a change. And so I applied to schools all over the country, really, but my goal was to try to get as far away from Midland as I could. So I took an academic scholarship to the University of Alabama, and didn't know a soul there, and I went and just tried something new for a while. So while I was there, I was studying business and entrepreneurship. My goal was to not end up back in Midland and to not end up in oil and gas, which I did both of those things after I got out of school, but tried to do something different. I'd seen kind of the ups and downs of the oil and gas industry my whole life, and my dad was a landman, my mom was a geologist, my granddad was a geologist, my brother was a geologist before he went to the mission field, and so I just kind of wanted to try to do something different. So then while I was there, kind of did the Greek thing, made friends that way. And my senior year, April 27th of my senior year, there was a big tornado that came through Tuscaloosa and wiped out the whole city. And it ended up cutting off my year early. And I got an email that said, hey, you're passing all your classes, so congratulations, you're now a graduate of the University of Alabama. And so I was an adult all of a sudden, and did not have all my plans worked out yet. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Okay. All right. So you're attending school in your senior year, and there's a tornado, and the school just says you're done, you passed.
Yep, go home.
Where was that when I went to school? You know what I'm saying?
I would have taken the finals over that deal, but
I would have taken whatever grade I would have had then.
Well,
'cause
yeah.
the finals killed me. So what was it like being at Alabama?
it was really interesting. I mean, it was definitely a different culture to step into. It felt almost like going back in time a little bit, just very slow. My dad described the drivers as having nowhere to go and all day to get there. It was a little just slow paced over there in Alabama, but I loved it. Loved the people. I happened to show up the very first year of Nick Saban, so it was a good time. Good time for me.
A good time.
Yeah, so I had a lot of fun watching football and doing all that. But then when I graduated via email, I came home and I was thinking it'd be kind of a temporary stay. Moved in with my parents for a little while, and then long story short, the economy was not good really anywhere else but here, and ended up taking a job in Midland. And here I am, I guess, 12 years later after being back. And so,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so 12 years after you graduated, you're back here. But after graduation, you said, I don't want to go back to Midland, but what was it that brought you back here? Was it you ran out of money? Was it?
Yeah, it was needing a
job?
job, needing to get started. I had applied to jobs in Dallas and in Alabama and other places, and just nothing was coming up. And so Midland was it. And of course, I thought that would be a temporary stay, but it hasn't been.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that now.
Now, did you meet your wife when you were at college?
No, I actually met her when I came back. That's kind of part of the story of jumping off into what we are doing now. So when I moved back to Midland, there was just not many of my friends back here yet, so everyone was still in school or had gotten a job someplace else, and so it was almost like being a stranger in my own town, and I was pretty lonely. I didn't have a lot to do, and so I was working, and I asked the company I was working for to give me as many hours as they'd let me, and I was living by myself, and I'd just come home and watch Cops with my dog, and it was kind of a boring existence, and so got pretty lonely and miserable. And I even tried to intentionally lose my job because I was trying to get out of Midland in any way that I could.
You were trying to get fired so you could get out of Midland.
Yeah, and it didn't work. God knew that He wanted me here, so I was at the swimming pool one Saturday with my friend who was a derrick hand for Neighbors, and really only saw him every couple months or so. We were at the pool, and a little boy came over to play with us. And then his dad came over after a while and was like, hey, y'all should come over to this young professional Sunday school class at the First Baptist Church. And I was not at all interested in that. I had kind of grown up around the church and left it when I went off to school. And that was something that just wasn't interesting to me at the time. But as time went on, I just really needed some friends. And so I thought, man, maybe there will be some normal people at this church, because I guess I had a prideful and just a stereotype of what church people were like. And so I went and I got connected with some men in that group and ended up in a Bible study, and I heard the gospel for the first time in my life clearly and was changed. And then shortly in that same class, I met my wife. And then her company was involved with Church Under the Bridge back in the day, and that's kind of how we got started.
Well, before we get into what you're doing now, I want to circle back to a couple of things. So, one was you talked about hearing the gospel for the first time. How old were you?
22.
22, but you grew up in church.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard it time and time again. I'm sure my parents had told me 100 times.
Right.
It's just that it had never made sense to me, I guess. I guess in my mind, I thought, I was thinking that, being a Christian was kind of living a moral life and cleaning yourself up and checking all the boxes and doing the moral thing, and then that way God would approve of you in some way. But in this study, hearing that the gospel was this free offer of grace that then set me free to obey out of gratitude, was just a whole game changer for me and shifted the whole paradigm. And really reoriented my life completely from that point.
And you're in this class or this group, and you met your wife. Was there something that led y'all to meet? Did you make the first move? Did she?
We had dogs.
You had dogs.
Yeah, we had dogs. So she had a great.
That was your connection.
Yeah, she had a Great Dane, and I had an Australian Shepherd, and some of our other friends in that singles class had dogs, and so we'd go to the dog park together, and then we started playing softball and kind of just doing group stuff together.
Ooh, church softball.
Yeah.
Those are cutthroat.
It was fun.
Okay, so you guys got married. What year was it when you got married?
Got married in 2013.
2013. Okay, and you stayed here in Midland. Were you still working in oil and gas at that time?
I was, yeah. So we had kind of gone down the road that I thought was what I wanted to do and what was expected of me after I got out of school. Had a good job, built a house. We had our first daughter. And I was working for a startup company that was doing midstream water stuff and disposals. And we were just kind of living that life. And Briana was still working a little bit. And we were just having kids and doing the Midland thing.
Now, does she go by a second name or middle
No,
name
she
or
just
anything?
goes by Briana.
Briana, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're at this midstream water company, and you're attending this church. And according to your bio, it seemed like there was a moment that happened when you began to volunteer working with the homeless. Can you walk me through what was it that led you to that? I guess it was called Church Under the Bridge.
Yeah, and it was kind of a slow process, but the big moment was in the beginning when I first heard about Church Under the Bridge, because you have to remember this was 2011. There's our unemployment rate's super low. Economy is doing great. McDonald's had a sign up that they were paying $18 an hour and they'd pick you up for work. And so when I heard that we had a church for the homeless, I mean, I was super skeptical. I'm like, why is anybody homeless here? There's jobs everywhere. This doesn't make any sense. But I was sheltered from poverty and homelessness really my whole life. I didn't know about it. And so I went with all the kind of preconceived ideas on what homelessness was and why people were homeless. And I was pretty reluctant, to be honest with you, and I didn't know how to talk to people, so I brought my dog with me because I thought that'd be a good icebreaker. And it was probably one of the first conversations that I had with someone when I realized that my preconceived ideas about homelessness were just not the case, and that it was much more complicated than I had ever thought. And so just really sitting down and hearing from somebody, even just a little bit of their story, started to kind of shake my paradigm.
All right. And then did you launch a homeless program from that, or did you continue to serve?
It took a number of years. So we just started serving on the weekends at Church Under the Bridge for a number of years, kind of got progressively more involved with them, ended up serving on their board. I was preaching pretty regularly out there. And then we were doing these night strikes in the wintertime where we'd go out when it was below freezing just to check on people to make sure that they were alive and safe. And so in doing that, I just ended up building a lot of relationships with people on the street, and just kind of getting progressively more and more drawn into how do we help these people, and what's the long-term solution for their problem.
What do you think is the misconception that people have about homeless, not just in Midland, but homeless in general? Because you said you kind of went in with some preconceived
Oh yeah, I mean
thoughts.
there's a lot. I mean we get the questions we get asked are all homeless people on drugs? Are they all mentally ill? Do they choose to be homeless? And those are the questions, some of the main ones we get asked. And I'd say that some of the things we found are that a lot of addiction on the street comes after the fact, after someone becomes homeless. And if you think about it, it's a lot to do with despair. And in my own proclivities and temptations, I could see myself falling into an addiction if I was in that situation too. Mental health is similar. The statistic is not too much different than the average American, but if you think about the situations that they're in, they're not sleeping well, they're constantly under stress. Of course, their mental health is going to struggle with that. And then as far as them choosing that, I have never met one person that I could actually believe is choosing to be out there. When you're out there in the cold, or even in the summer when it's so hot, I mean, no one is when they're asked by their elementary school teacher, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one says homeless. Right. And so those are some of the things that I think were in my mind when I first approached was, and the fact that they're choosing this, and they're just being lazy and they could just go get a job and easily get out of it. Right. That was in my mind.
So you're married, you're serving at this Church Under the Bridge, you're really throwing yourself into that. What is God teaching you at this moment? What are you learning about yourself?
Oh man, I was learning about myself that I was pretty prideful because I went in with the first person that I really got connected with and started trying to help. I mean, I had it all figured out. I knew exactly what they needed. Just get them cleaned up, get them some new clothes, get them a good night's sleep and a resume, and they'll be off to the races. And so, he was working on me to show me one, all those things, but two, that the homeless are people, that they are created in His image, that they're not, they're not in a different category than I am. They're just in a different circumstance. And so, all those things were kind of simultaneously being learned, and then trying to apply those and helping people.
So all of this is happening. It's transpiring. When did you finally get that sense that this was potentially your life's calling?
Well, it was definitely, I would say, sort of thrust upon me. The Lord made it very clear. I think He knew that I'm a little thick-headed, and so it was. What really happened was we heard about this place in Austin that had built a tiny home community, and another local organization approached our homeless coalition and said, "Hey, we're interested in doing this, and we've got a donor that's given us some land, and we just don't know the homeless, and so we'd want to partner with somebody that does. We mostly just build houses." And so I went down there and spent 3 days and did a little symposium to kind of learn about it and then come back and make a report. Well, when I came back and made my report, I was really excited about it, but it just kind of was determined that it was not a fit for the organization that was initially interested in it, and it makes sense why. But I just kind of couldn't shake it, and so I just kept thinking about it. And then a couple of, I'm trying to remember. So my brother and his wife told my family that they were going to go overseas to Indonesia as missionaries, and that was a big shocker for our family because he was a geologist in Austin and just got married, and so for me,
good money.
yeah, and so for me, I'm like, man, what am I doing with my life? What am I prioritizing? And I just started to evaluate, the way I was spending my money, because I wanted to support him and his mission, but so much of my resources were tied up in my house and in my lifestyle, and that just really convicted me. So Briana and I, at that point, decided we were going to sell our house and downsize and just live differently in Midland with our same careers. Little did we know this was the Lord kind of starting the process for us. And then soon after that, the community there in Austin announced that they were going to have this 4-month missional internship program where you go live there. And I thought that sounded cool, but I had a house, I had a wife, I had a daughter. You had to pay to go there. You weren't getting paid. It seemed like it was just, pie in the sky idea. But I couldn't shake it, and I kind of kept bringing it up to my wife. And finally one day she said, "Why don't you just call them and tell them what you're thinking?" And I think we both thought they would say no. But little did we know they had a motto that was "Just say yes and figure it out." And so when we called and said, "Hey, we've got, I've got a family, and, I don't think we could live in one of your single occupant tiny homes, but we're interested, and we feel like the Lord is kind of putting this on our hearts." And they were like, "Yeah, come on." And we're like, "Oh, I guess this means, the door opened." So we were kind of shocked by that. But we sort of just kind of kept on going down that road. And every time we were in church or Sunday school or in the Word, it was just like it was hitting us between the eyes, like, y'all got to go.
Right.
And so we told our parents, and that was hard. Definitely. Difficult to think about your kids jumping off into something risky like that after, having one jump off into overseas missions in a largely Muslim country. And so, it was a crazy time for us, but we ended up leaving January of 2017, spent 4 months there in Austin in an RV with our 18-month-old. I'd sold our house and then came back and started the Field's Edge.
There's that security,
yeah,
having that full-time job and that house. It seems like that I could see how the parents, I'm a parent,
sure.
that I would be like, oh, are you serious about this?
Mm-hmm.
I remember, do you remember when we met?
Mm-hmm.
First time we met?
Yeah, Starbucks. And
I guess you hadn't gone to the
I think we
Austin
were just
community.
about to
You were
go.
about ready to go. I was at a church here locally, and so we talked about this, and I was kind of blind to the fact that there was homeless in our community and that
Right.
something like this would be needed. So tell me about the Field's Edge and what it is, where it is, what's its mission.
Yeah, so the Field's Edge is basically a replication of the community that we lived at in Austin on a smaller scale and tailored to fit in Midland, of course. But our mission is to cultivate home for the homeless and to promote a lifestyle of service for the glory of Christ. And we do that by building tiny homes and lifting people up off the streets into a permanent and supportive community. So our target population are the chronically homeless. On average, they're 55 and older. They've been homeless 10 to 20 years. And once they come to live with us, our commitment is to be their home for the rest of their lives if they choose to. And the reason for that really kind of boils down to what we found as the root of homelessness, which is the catastrophic disconnection of community and family. You know, there's a lot of triggers, whether that be loss of job or mental health or domestic violence, any number of things. But those things happen to everybody in some degree in our lives. We all experience difficulty. But the difference in us and the homeless is that we've had someone that we can call. I mean, I've ended up staying at my parents' house probably 3 times in the course of my life when I needed help, and potentially otherwise could have ended up homeless. And so that's what we've learned. And so, we want to commit to being family for our neighbors for the rest of their life.
How did your wife feel about this? Did she get the same calling? Was this something you had to grab her arm and pull her, or did she lead in some of that?
So she was the one that invited me to Church Under the Bridge first. It was her company that was involved, and so she kind of was already inclined to move towards the homeless before I was. And then all along the way, you know, this was before we had 4 kids. And so in the beginning, she and I were in it together completely. She was on night strikes with me. She was at Church Under the Bridge with me. It was really our mission together, and still is. It's just changed, you know, now that we've got 4 kids, and, you know, her role has shifted a little bit, and so has mine. But, she's definitely been in from the very beginning.
How is God using this moment in your season of your life to teach your kids about homeless or about God's grace?
Yeah.
How's he using this season?
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. So my kids are like the best neighbors of all time. So we live at the village. In every group of 10 homes, there's 9 single occupant tiny homes for the chronically homeless, and then there's what we call a missional home, and that's what we live in. And there's going to be one of those in every group, and that's really important for us to have that community building piece that's there to receive people that are coming out of decades of homelessness, to help with the adjustment and all that. But in doing that, we've been living there for a little over a year and a half now. And just seeing my kids and how they love people is the coolest thing. Like they're out like hanging out by the fire pit with our neighbors, or like taking care of the chickens. And one of our neighbors, Kim, they call her Auntie Kim, and they go by for some candy every day, and like they're checking on people. And like I learned so much from how they love people. It reminds me to just, you know, not get too distracted by the things that I have to do, and to remember that we live in community, and that the main thing that we're here for is to build relationships with people. And my kids are really good at that.
Now, you live on property,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And I came out, it's been a couple of weeks to see the place. I heard about the vision, right, sitting at Starbucks, and then now I'm seeing the vision in person. So one of the things that struck me, and I want you to kind of talk about this because our listeners, viewers can get a context of what's going on. Tiny homes, right? But there's no kitchen in the home, right? Because you showed me this place, you're like, this is where everybody comes to cook. So people have to leave their homes to go on property to cook, shower, do things, because that builds community.
Right. Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so we designed the entire village around facilitating interactions with people. I had read some article online that was talking about how in order to build a relationship with somebody, you've got to have about 500 random interactions with them, just passing them, waving at them, saying hello. Just getting comfortable with people. And so the houses are all arranged in a circle. They all have front porches. They face each other. And then, like you said, the home itself is basically a bedroom, and we have the kitchen and the laundry and the bath outside, so that we just kind of guarantee that those interactions are taking place, and that we see people and that, we're able to check on them. So the design is intentionally meant to foster those relationships. And we've seen that work really well. When we come outside, somebody's sitting on their porch and they holler at us and ask how we're doing. And it's just kind of, how we live our lives is just kind of constantly around each other. And we really like that.
So what would be different if somebody was asking this question, because it was something that I asked of you a couple weeks ago? What's different between, say, a place like a Salvation Army, a safe place, than the Field's Edge? What are some of the differences?
Well, so one of the main differences is that Safe Place and Salvation Army are great services for those emergency needs when you're really in a pickle and you need to go to the shelter tonight, you need to get fed tonight, or you've been a victim of domestic violence and you need a safe place to go tonight. Where we come in is a little bit more downstream of that emergency need when we're working on the long-term strategies. And so we work with the Salvation Army a lot. A lot of our residents have stayed there for a long time. And we actually have a job program that picks up people from the Salvation Army too. So we work in tandem with them a lot. But where we differ is that we are a permanent housing opportunity. So once you qualify and go through our whole process, as long as you have two main responsibilities: to pay your rent, which we empower them to earn through different dignified jobs on site, and then to obey the law. And so long as they do those two things, they can stay as long as they want. They can live independently and make their own decisions and live how they want to live within those boundaries. And then, like I said, other programs are more temporary and transitional.
So there is pretty much some different avenues for people who are homeless in the community, different levels.
Yes.
Stuff. What's been one of the biggest rewards for you in opening the Field's Edge?
I think just seeing the neighbors that I've known since we stepped foot on the street at Church Under the Bridge is just incredible to see. Like, I just wrote a blog this week about one of our neighbors, Ted, and he'd come up to me. I was out walking my dog and I wasn't feeling well. And he came up to me and asked me if I'd heard this song by Clay Walker called Chain of Love. And I was like, I probably have. That's like, from the 90s. It's probably been a while. And he said, well, that's our song because you saved my life. And, he starts crying. I start crying. This is like a big burly dude. But him and then another neighbor, Kim, that we've known since the very beginning, and just to watch their life be transformed, to watch them come from this really difficult situation where they're living in survival mode and they're having to hustle and you can tell that they're in distress and that they're lonely, but now you can see that they're flourishing and that they have a place to call home. They have people that love them. You can see them, getting into things that they enjoy doing, and smiling and laughing. And I think that has been the most rewarding, that long, slow process of transformation. And that's really what we're there for. It's not a quick thing. It's not a quick fix. It's a long, slow process, and we do deep work with people.
I remember walking through recently, and you showed me one of the rooms. I guess it's like a community center room. I don't remember the name of it, but there was a wall full of puzzles. And it was really neat because I got to meet some of the residents, the neighbors, as they're called, and they were excited about puzzles. And I'm like, who gets excited about puzzles, right? I do puzzles once a year, New Year's Eve with my family, but these guys were really excited about doing these puzzles and portraying them on the wall. And I guess that's part of that community that you're talking about. I was also offered some eggs.
Yeah.
And so I saw some animals that were going on. So tell me about that outside of just that human interaction. What's going on with maybe some of the animals and eggs and that's going on there at the edge?
So all that relates to the neighbors, and it's all an effort to give them opportunities to earn that dignified income. So trying to find work that is within their abilities, that's meaningful, and that also is good for the community. So the animals are a big part of that. We've got now 3 llamas. We got two new llamas. We lost one, sadly.
Really?
And we got two more. We've got a bunch of baby goats last week that were born. and then chickens. And the chickens, we're increasing that flock because we just brought on a new neighbor, and his job is going to be to sell eggs. And so that's something that we're doing. The other one cares for the goats. We've tried milking the goats and making soap. Haven't had success there yet.
Really?
But in another huge benefit to the animals is just their therapeutic value. Like we were out there doing a news story a couple weeks ago, and Dave, one of the neighbors who's like the farm guy, was out there showing them around, and they were commenting on just how calm it made them feel. And you know, we've had so many different experiences where our neighbors have come together around the animals, whether that be chasing off coyotes or helping one that's sick or whatever, and they've just really been a nice community builder as well.
Yeah. If you did not have that moment at Church Under the Bridge, let's say that you weren't invited, your wife didn't invite you there, or maybe you went but you didn't have that pull, do you think you'd still be in oil and gas, or what would you be doing now?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know that, barring that situation, I ever would have, grown a heart for the homeless. And so, yeah, I very well could be still doing oil and gas and still living in that house and kind of doing what I was thinking I was doing before.
Isn't that just providential of how God uses those moments to pivot us, in a different direction? Because I could, I've shared my story before, working in ministry and then working in nonprofit and then working in for-profit, and each one of those I can sense God moving and working in those, and it's a non-traditional story that I have.
Yeah.
You've talked about having a dog multiple times, and I know our viewers and listeners obviously can't see the dog that's behind you, but Rocky is behind you. Tell me about Rocky and why he's with you.
Cool. Yeah, so I've got Rocky. He is a Bernedoodle, so he's a pretty big boy, and he is my service dog. So for the last couple years, been having some health issues and some mobility challenges, and so just finished in the last couple months doing service dog training with Rocky, and so took him for our first trip on the airplane this last week to a doctor's appointment in Houston, and he did great.
Yeah, and no bad looks from people?
No.
How are you received when...
Oh, yeah, everybody was really excited to see him. He sat with his paws crossed, looked very fancy in the front of the airplane, I mean. The only thing he did not like were the elevators. That was a new thing for him.
Yeah. Are we getting some answers on some of your health issues right now?
Not yet. So still working on that. So prayers appreciated when it comes to that. Yeah. It's been a struggle to deal with limitations as I'm seeking to follow the Lord and be faithful to Him.
So what's the future look like for the Field's Edge? I know you've got some homes there now. There's obviously, I've shared this before with several people. When you work in ministry, you work in something where you're helping people, not to be afraid of the work that has no end, because there's always going to be somebody who has a need. You're always going to come across someone who, for whatever reason, is homeless or down and out, and they're out of money for whatever reason. So what is next for the Field's Edge?
Yeah, next for us is expansion. So we have 23.5 acres at our location, and we've built 10 homes total. We have room for up to 100, so 9 more circles of 10 tiny homes. Hopefully we don't have to build them all. Hopefully we keep building over the years, and then we get to a point where we realize they're not needed any longer. But we do have the room for that. So we are looking at an expansion within the next couple of years. That would be 40 more houses and some support buildings. It would take part in kind of some sub phases that would space it out a little bit. And really the idea is to build that, but then also to create more jobs for people that come to live there as well. So that's part of the whole expansion is more jobs.
Do you have a team and a staff there, or is it just you and your wife?
Yeah, we've got a staff. So I've got 5 on staff right now, and we're going to be hiring a few more coming up. One guy is specifically focused on our off-site jobs program. So we put people to work picking up litter that are currently homeless. One of the big barriers to getting a job if you're homeless is having an ID. And you really can't do anything if you don't have an ID. You can't get a job. You can't stay in a hotel. A lot of times in cities, you can't even stay at a shelter. Ours is not that way, thankfully. But our work program puts people to work immediately that day. picking up trash, and then we start the process of reobtaining their vital documents and get it back, before they have to report their income, and then also help them with next steps and housing and jobs and stuff like that.
Well, John Mark, I appreciate you being here so much, and I want to get to wrapping this up in a minute, but I got to rapid fire some fun questions at you. Have you ever eaten ice cream with your bare hands
Yes,
recently?
probably. I got 4 kids.
4 kids. No, not them eating bare hands.
I know, but
you.
it gets on my lap and on my shirt, and I just get it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
When you were a teenager, how many times did it take you to nail parallel parking?
Oh, I was a pro.
You were a pro at parallel parking?
Yeah.
See, Chris is not. Chris, do you do parallel parking real well? What's it look like for you?
I'm pretty good at it. When I was in driver's ed, we drove a 95 Suburban.
Oh, my gosh.
So we had to parallel park
Big
that.
dog.
Yeah?
And my driving instructor told me, he goes, pull all the way to the end of the block. There's no cars around. He had 2 cones set up.
Yeah.
And he said, if you can parallel park it from here, not putting, you got to gun it,
Really?
I'll pass you right now. And I cranked that thing in reverse and just 90s action moved it right in there.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to know how many times it took me to
I
parallel.
can look at you and tell you can't parallel park.
Yeah, because I've only got 13 years left,
I know.
right? According to your 70
Well, no,
cutoff.
according to your real age, you've got 3.
No, that's not I'm not 67 like you think. Have you ever eaten ice cream with your bare hands?
I'm
just-
overweight, of course.
Okay, that's not what I was asking, but you look like you probably would just.
I look like the kind of guy that would eat just fistfuls of ice cream.
That's right. That's right. Or Cool Whip.
Mm-hmm.
At college, at Alabama, did you ever fall asleep in class?
Oh, yeah.
Which one?
Probably all of them.
Oh, all your classes?
All the 8 a.m.s anyway. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Don't take any 8 a.m. classes. That's
Yeah.
like a no-no.
I had to.
My son's building his schedule, and he's like, Dad, I don't want any classes before noon. And I'm like, there's no college
Yeah,
classes
good luck.
afternoon that anybody takes. So, all right, I want to wrap this up. 2 questions.
Okay.
One is, we're sitting at this table and we're having a conversation, and you're a guy who I admire as you walk with the Lord and listen to Him and are doing what He's called you to do and work with homeless, and I applaud you for that. Who would you invite to sit at your table that you would say, I will let them pour into me?
Definitely my pastor. That's one for sure. Definitely my parents. This has been an interesting journey for all of us. And I think in the beginning when we jumped off into this, it was scary, like we talked about, for them. But they've been super helpful and wise and encouraging all along the way. And so I'd love to have them also. And then I just got some really good friends. I got a really great counselor. I'm a huge proponent of biblical counseling, and I'm in it every week. And I would definitely have him here too.
Wow. What do you want the Field's Edge, and maybe more importantly you, to be known for?
Well, I would say faithfulness, and that's kind of been our story all along. This has been a big undertaking to jump off into, and it seems like, man, they did something really big, and they jumped off into this big calling that God was had on their life. But from my perspective, looking back, it has been thousands and thousands of just taking the next step and trying to be faithful. And now we're in a place that we never expected. But we've seen the Lord come through in some amazing ways. I mean, looking at the village now, when I walk out my front door every morning and realize, like, man, this is actually here. And I can say honestly that, like, I was there, I showed up and was part of it and did some of the work to do it. But, like, He did it. God did it all. And so I would say that going forward, I mean, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with this medical stuff too, is just like, how can I be faithful today? If I don't have the energy, if I don't have, if I'm hurting or whatever it may be, what's in front of me that I can decide to be faithful and do that today. So faithfulness.
Well, I applaud you. Keep doing what you're doing. I can definitely tell God's hands on what you're doing in your work. Rocky has been a gold down there. He has not moved at all. That is awesome. My dog will be all over the place. Thank you again for being here. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining with us. And as always, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we will see everybody next week.
Elevate your operation with Performance Chemical Company, the pioneers in redefining chemical solutions for the oil and gas industry in the Permian Basin. Unveiling groundbreaking ideas since 2017, our dry chemistry plant stands as a testament to innovation. Our products and services revolutionize water treatment, production, midstream, and saltwater disposals. We're your strategic partners in optimizing investments, slashing operating expenses. Performance Chemical Company. How you get there matters.